Goeienaand, welkom by Fokus. Ek is Lenet Francis. Vanaand ons langbeloofde gesprek oor probleme met eise van die vergoedingsfonds. Tientallen Fokus-kykers kla oor die probleme wat hulle ondervind met eise by die vergoedingsfonds nadat hulle aan diensbeseer en medies ongeskik verklaar is om te werk. Die klagtes is baie dieselfde en die direkteur van kompensasievoordele, Mpinki Sihlangu, het ingestem om vanaand die kykers se vrae te kom beantwoord. Ons het ook die Suid-Afrikaanse Polisiediens genooi, want die meeste klagtes het gekom van oud-polisielede. Ons ander gas is dus Brigadier Patrick Ntengwe. And thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and thanks for accepting our invitation. I want to quickly just give you a summary, Brigadier, of the main complaints that we've collated from our viewers and those that complained. A lot of them say, firstly, the SABC lose their records, their documentation, supporting forms. They alter injuries from on duty to off duty. They don't respond to queries. PTSD is not considered an injury on duty even after a court ruled that it is. Do these complaints sound familiar to you, and what has SABC done with regard to this, because this is not new?
Thank you, Lynette. I think the context is important also here. If we talk about documents getting lost or forms of whatever nature, the context I want to bring home is that as the police, number one, we work with serious records. We understand the importance of records, very much so. So keeping records is very key in our organization. However, if for whatever reason, documents get missing, it shouldn't be a problem for the police. We are a very multi-layered organization, from station to the province up to head office. So in other words, if a document somehow gets lost from all those various layers, we are able to trace those records. So that shouldn't be a big problem, really. We have actually, in practice, handled a number of cases where you will find that we don't have sufficient documents at the national office. All we do is to call either the province or the station, and they are able to locate those documents for us. Explain
to us, what's the process if I want to claim now, and where do I go, where do I start, and is there specifically designated personnel at the police station that help me to complete those forms? Are they trained? Where do they get their training? How is that escalated that it ends up to the compensations fund on their desk? And also, please address this perception and belief with a lot of the complainants that it's changed. That injury happened on duty, but it is changed to off duty, and that it is, in many cases, deliberate.
Lynette, that is why I'm saying maybe there is some bouts of ignorance, or not really.
On whose part?
Probably on the part of some members.
Claiming, or those trying to assist them at the police station?
Claiming. Yeah.
So hopefully there's personnel at the police station helping them if they are ignorant, saying this is the way we complete these forms.
The context I want to bring is that, number one, issues of injuries on duty are dealt with. It's a two-pronged process, whereas the employer, our duty is to get the report about an incident. Once we get it, we inquire into that incident. It's an administrative inquiry process.
First day at the police station?
Yes. So I call it preliminary inquiry because the ultimate decision lies with Pinky's environment, where they will adjudicate and then make a legal pronouncement whether or not the incident is an IOD or not. So from the police side, yes, we do those inquiries. And Department of Labor, indeed, they respect the findings of the employer. Is a material evidence for them to also adjudicate on IOD cases. So to say, to allege that some cases that are on duty are changed to off duty really that one I really dispute, because I can give you an example. Last financial year, we had around 6,000 injuries. Out of all those, around 97%, we acknowledge them as incidents that were caused by official duties. So to say we alter incidents that are on duty to off duty really is far-fetched. Actually, I mean, I've been working in that environment for quite long now. We hardly disapprove. There are instances where we do disapprove, because I mean, if you don't have evidence and there really is something that is far-fetched, we have to inquire into it in the interest of the public. Remember, we are entrusted with public funds.
Absolutely.
We can't just accept anything, even if it happens in somebody's private life.
So is there somebody at the police station designated to help those officers or claimants through that process before it gets escalated to either the station commander or to Ms. Sihlango's compensation fund?
Definitely. At station level, at every layer of the police, there are HR officials, human resource officials. At station level, there are human resource officials. They don't only deal with the IODs per se, because HR is a loaded function. But IOD is part of an HR-driven process. When a member sustains an injury or contracts a disease in the line of duty, number one, the person must report to the immediate commander. The immediate commander will then create that link with our HR, who will then complete the necessary forms, where the employer, that is just to notify the employer that something has happened. From that point, that's when we do our internal inquiry process.
So please, both of you, forgive me because I am going to be jumping, but this is the opportunity to address a lot of those concerns that our viewers raise. So let's talk about PTSD, and I'm going to address it to you later on as well. A lot of them claim that even though they have been diagnosed with PTSD, there is no support within that, either the station or the South African Police Service, that they don't get debriefed, that when they have experienced trauma, there is no support system in place. So give our viewers and these members an idea of the type of claims that's related to PTSD and how many of that are addressed.
Lynette, I don't know which period of time.
Some refer to the 90s, 80s, 90s, even 2000s, sir.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking that question. Remember, we also come a long way as a country. When the police was first incepted, I mean, it was a tigers don't cry kind of a thing. But with the evolvement of time, the police realized that such emotional support is very necessary. In fact, as I speak to you now, we've got a dedicated component headed by a chief director for employee health and wellness. Each and every instance of trauma is reported to them, and those members are debriefed. It is part of records that are mandatory when incidents of trauma occur. So I come from the police. It's fully fledged. Our members have got all their support at their fingertips. The employee health and wellness component is outstretched to the provinces, to the station. Yes, you can talk about issue of numbers, whether our ratios, but what I'm trying to say is that we have got a legal structure dedicated to support members when they encounter traumatic incidents.
Just before we go to break, I wanted to ask, do the police, SABC, use the electronic system of the compensation fund by lodging claims, etc.?
Yes, that is a new development.
You're using it currently?
Yes. Historically, it used to be manual. So we are also leveraging with technology, of course. So now it's being done online. We log into their website and report claims. And for us, that is the way to go.
So after the break, we'll continue this conversation with you, and then we'll talk to Ms. Sihlangu. Thank you so much for your patience during that part. There's some essential questions that needed to be asked. Net hierna sit ons die gesprek voort. Daar's nog baie vrae. Bly ingeskakel. Welkom terug. Ons praat vanaand oor probleme met eise vir beserings aan diens by die vergoedingsfonds en ons gaste is die direkteur van kompensasievoordele Mpinki Sihlangu en die Suid-Afrikaanse Polisiediens se brigadier Patrick Ntengwe. So you've heard some of the points that we needed to get clarity on in terms of the processes within the South African Police Services. I first want to ask you, as an overview, if you had to this evening do a SWOT analysis of the strengths and the shortcomings of the compensation fund, what would you highlight? Because based on the complainants and our viewers, things are in shambles at the compensation fund.
Okay, thanks Lynette, and thanks for having me. The first thing that I would like to say is that when it comes to injury on duty, we have a pool of medical officers or medical practitioners. Those are the people who give us medical advice to ensure that a claim is adjudicated correctly. And we also train our individuals on an ongoing basis to ensure that our staff members have got the latest information. They also know how to utilize our systems, and they also know how to interpret our legislation. So for me, our strength is that when it comes to the adjudication process, it's prioritized and it's mainly supported by our medical officers.
So if you talk about medical officers, are they adequate staff? Because there's alleged that sometimes it is the medical doctors, sometimes it's some nurses with medical training, and sometimes it's literally admin staff and clerks going through it and saying, well, this has validity and others don't.
That is partly true. We've got a pool of medical officers. In each province, we have one medical practitioner, that is a doctor, and we've got about 3 nurses that also support our admin staff. Our admin staff is mainly there to administer what the medical advice is. So I won't say it's solely our admin clerks who are adjudicating on claims. And again, one thing that we've done also is that we've given the delegation to adjudicate our claims to a senior official. So that will be someone who's very much experienced, not less than 3 years experience, someone who's worked with this medical advice and understands how to implement it.
So the same complaint that is lodged at the South African Police Service is that you have this lovely various ways of communicating and supposedly how it can be lodged, the claim that you can follow up, but the new system, members say that they can lodge it, but they can't follow it up. They can't keep track. They don't have insight to it. Many say that you don't get back to them. There's a complaints at compensation fund, nobody responds, nobody answers phone calls, and they feel ignored. And so I can go through all these claims. So I'd like you to address that and also give us a sense of what is the current shortcomings, what's the backlog, for example, of what you're trying to deal with, because as far as our viewers are concerned, they feel that you are not delivering.
What we are observing in the compensation fund is that most of our clients still believe in engaging with the Pretoria office, and we have since decentralized processing of claims to our provinces. So each and every province has got at least 3 offices that can adjudicate claims. And unfortunately, because of their belief that we are still centralized and they want to be assisted there, we are swamped at head office and we cannot really respond to all of those inquiries. You can imagine if you've got a pool to support your processing teams, but you have to translate them into processing instead of supporting your processing teams. So definitely, where you have a congestion of all your complaints going instead of going to the right places, some of the calls will be missed, definitely. But as we're sitting right now, currently, we're sitting at a response rate of about 80%. So in a day, we take about 5,000 calls at a central point, but we respond to about 80% of them. So definitely in any call center environment, not everybody is satisfied, not everybody gets answered to, because some may abandon the call because it's taking long for them to hold, but we definitely have structures in place to respond. There are instances that we still have to redress. When it comes to old claims, we have migrated to different systems. What we are noticing is that the efforts that we've put in place are helping us to resolve claims quicker, but those will be your most current claims. Now, with regards to our old claims, what we've put in place is that we're trying to be reactive in nature. So when somebody comes to say, I have never been in service since this time, we respond when we come across such an incident. So they may have submitted their documents long ago. They may have not been
How long ago are we talking about? Because, and please rectify me if I'm wrong, from what I understand, unreported claims are standing at about 45,000. So if you refer to, redress, what numbers are we talking about? Particularly if we're talking about a backlog of people saying that I'm sitting here, 20 years later, and nobody's even attended to me.
Lynette, I have to disagree with that. We issued an article in the previous financial year inviting our clients to come and shout and tell us if they have not been serviced. And we have not received such a response. We have not really come across 45,000 complaints from new people that we have not serviced in the past. So we don't have evidence to really justify that there are so many cases that sit in our system without being attended to. But what we are picking up, Lynette, is that we've got a lot of open cases. We may have received an accident report, adjudicated a claim and accepted the claim, but that's where it stopped. We haven't received further documentation to take the process forward. And our systems close the claim in 2 years' time, but they may be reopened at any time. So we need documents to finalize a claim. Without documentation to finalize a claim, definitely there may not be a follow-up after a claim has been accepted.
Okay, for the moment, we're going to just leave it there, get a break. And when we come back, as ons terugkom, gaan ons verder gesels. Moenie weggaan nie, ons is nou terug. Tientallen Fokus-kykers kla oor probleme met eise vir vergoeding nadat hulle aandiens beseer is. Ons gaste is die direkteur van kompensasievoordele, Mpinki Sihlangu, en die Suid-Afrikaanse Polisiediens se brigadier Patrick Ntengwe. And I know you wanted to respond to some of the comments that Ms. Sihlangu made. Brigadier?
Yeah, just to latch on the issue of enabling compensation fund to adjudicate on cases. Definitely they need full documentation. If you talk about an injury, it doesn't heal overnight. An injured person will go into follow-up treatment for quite a lengthy period of time. So sometimes they submit progress, what you call a progress report, but that does not enable compensation fund to make the final the adjudication. They need a final medical report. So the lead time between injury and the stabilization point naturally takes time. But what I'm trying to say is that it is important that injured members make sure that the final medical report is submitted, because without it, compensation fund cannot make an adjudication.
I just wanted to touch on two things. This is the problem, that they say they provide all this documentation. And they wait, and then they're informed, but your claim is inadequate. This is missing, that is missing, knowing that they provided everything. If it's not getting lost at SABC, it's getting lost at the compensation fund. With reference to the decentralization, a lot of them feel they go to the provincial office where they should be, and then they said, no, you need to go to head office. When they get to head office says, no, you've got to go back to provincial. So they don't even know who they're talking to. They don't get any response to their claims. They have no idea why is my stuff not being addressed. That's part of it. So now I want to ask you, is the systems in place, is that adequate to actually help and address this? Or is it so difficult and so laborious that you can't even find your way through it?
Lynette, like I said before, that currently we're doing very well. With regards to our current cases, we are able to see that we're doing very well.
Where can you improve, Ms. Shishlangu?
In fact, before I talk to where we can improve, I want to talk about not all documents are submitted through the employer. And that's one step that is very important.
And that also refers to the Northern Cape's finding, the High Court's finding. Not the Northern Cape, the North Gauteng High Court, with regard to some employers that don't even submit, and then the employee doesn't know what's going on because there's no communication between or investigation between the compensation fund and those employees.
That's not what I'm referring to. I would like to speak specifically about PTSD cases because we have a very strong relationship with the South African Police Services. When we receive these cases, mostly, over 95% of them, we receive them through lawyers. We don't receive them through the South African Police Services. And that's one step that is very important. I would like to emphasize to our viewers and our clients that an employer is very important. That's why we call it injury on duty. Only an employer will be aware of this injury on duty. So when they submit through their lawyers, we still have to engage their employer to confirm, was this definitely an injury on duty? And every injury on duty claim must be noted by the employer. We cannot bypass that step. So our clients should not feel like when they submit documents to us through their lawyers directly, they're really submitting. In terms of our legislation, and we cannot change that, we definitely need an employer to do that. Coming back to the issue of loss of documentation. In our previous systems, I'll refer to previous and current systems. In our previous system, we were submitting documents manually and we were scanning them onto the system. So even if you were to lose your manual document, it would definitely be there in some other form electronically. In our current system, we submit information electronically and we are able to access it quicker. That's why our turnaround time is much quicker than before. So we still need to improve because now that we have offices in provinces, if a client comes to me at the head office level and want me to assist them with a claim immediately, you can imagine I must still obtain that information that has been submitted to a local level. So that sort of lengthens the service delivery period for a client. But if our client was sticking to one entry point, I'm definitely sure they would receive a good service.
Just with regard to the entry points, it's understandable and I think justified if you're not getting a response from the compensation fund that you feel your only alternative is to get a lawyer because maybe legally they'll listen to me then. So just to comment on that, because that's the sense that I got from our viewers. And then with just trying to understand what is the turnover time. Say, for example, I was in the service, the SABC has escalated it now to the compensation fund. How long does it take to actually solve or address a claim?
Right now, in our current performance is sitting at, we resolve most of our claims in about a week.
In a week?
Yes, definitely. We adjudicate. Our turnaround time says, if you check our annual performance plan and our annual report for the previous financial year, we've targeted to adjudicate claims in 60 days. If you look at that, we have surpassed our target and the numbers also have increased drastically from previous financial year. For me, that demonstrates that the compensation fund has turned a corner. But unfortunately, when it comes to redressing old cases, I have already indicated we only react because we may not be aware of those cases where people have not been assisted.
Where can we...
Just to let you on the point that she just raised now, on the latter part of her address. Talking to the old cases now, that could have probably fallen into the crack because of the manual.
Sorry, guys. So if we're talking about old cases, give me an estimate of how many thousand or hundred are we referring to if we say old cases? And then also, let's wrap with that and tell me how can we improve, how can we do better so that we don't have members having to run to Fokus to address their issues?
Lynette, recently I received a case of 80s, early 90s. But in some instances, you'll find that
you're going to have to forgive me, both of you.
Yeah.
We're going to have to invite you again. And we must please have this conversation again. because I'm sure we're going to get a great response. Our time is unfortunately where we're going to have to end it for now, Brigadier. But thank you so much for coming in, Mr. Shlangu. I'm going to invite you again, and we'll continue with regards to what our viewers say. Ongelukkig is dit die einde van vanaand se gesprek, maar soos jy hoor, ons is oudergewoonte volgende Sondag aand om 6:00 terug hier op SABC 2. Ons gaan probeer om weer hieroor te gesels, maar laat weet ons wat jy dink. Stuur gerus jou kommentaar, jou tweets en jou voorstelle. Jy kan dit vir ons e-pos na fokus@sabc.co.za. Besoek ook ons Fokusblad op Facebook, soek onder by Fokus SABC, en jy kan ons ook volg op Twitter by FokusZA. Baie dankie vir die saamkyk en jou terugvoer. Ons wag daarvoor en dan gesels ons weer volgende Sondag aand om 6:00 net hier op SABC 2.